Well, thanks, Lane, for joining us today. I'm so excited for people to hear about your book, Lifeline, Recovering Your Mental Wellness Through Uncovering Your Creative Brilliance. I just so enjoyed reading it. It was like talking to a girlfriend. So I think this will be a great episode for our listeners. And do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about why you wrote the book and a little bit more about the book would be great.
Absolutely. And thank you, Yolanda, for having me. I'm so grateful to join you. Um, yeah, so my name's Lane Gardner. I am an author, a speaker, a singer-songwriter, arts educator, nonprofit founder. And I know that sounds like a lot of different things, but it's actually all serves the same purpose, which is that the work that I do is about helping people to uncover what I like to call as their original superpower, which is creative expression. And that's not meant to tell people to become artists or become artistic. It's really meant to help folks realize that each of us has this deep inner well of resources, assets, gifts, talents within us. And we're able to access that through creative expression to be able to get down in there and see what we have inside of us that maybe we don't even know that's there, that can
Right.
help us live fuller lives, richer lives, more aligned lives. And with that, it can impact our mental health and help us improve our daily mental health and also help us work through some of the long-term harder difficult things in our life. It can bring healing, it can bring relief and ease. And that's ultimately what the book is about. I like to call it part memoir, part toolkit. And I sort of take the reader through some of my story, which, if I'm being honest, I did not want to tell.
Right. We never
And
do.
yes, and it's interesting to me. I've been doing this work for over 30 years, and I part of what I do is help people to share their stories through a creative avenue for healing, for being able to transform difficult things into something beautiful, right? And that's the point of it. But I was only willing to take that so far for myself. I wanted to be able to share my stories in the creative ways that I did, but I didn't want to touch my early past with a 10-foot pole.
Mhm.
And part of that is because it's extremely traumatic. I had a very difficult early life, um, partially raised in a fundamentalist religious cult, which I'm sure any of your listeners can imagine some of the devastation and impact that that has on a young person. But it wasn't until actually a year and a half ago now, I just got my son up and running. I got him out the door. He was on his way to college. And, as a parent, right, that's a very exhausting thing, getting your kid out of the door.
Yeah, it's a
And
lot of emotions.
I know. And I said to myself, I'm going to give myself just a little bit of time to celebrate, to grieve, to just be in that space. And, it wasn't but 2 weeks later, a colleague of mine who I was doing a podcast with said to me, you have to tell your story. You have to write a book. I'm connecting you with my publisher and I'm not taking no for an answer.
Mhm.
And I had this huge reaction. I was like, no way, I am not doing this. But what I came to realize, and also with the support of my husband, it was like, hold on, let's take a minute and think about this. I realized that it was one of those moments where life steps in and says, this is the thing that you need to do. And so I set to it and I kind of went through this process, taking my own medicine, using the creative process to unearth and to transform my experiences into not only a way to help myself, but also as an offering to other people to start to understand how you can use your own creative expression as a way to help yourself and to heal yourself and to feel better over the course of your life.
So music was your way, right, to have that healing happen. What else have you seen? Healing in music or the creative process being used to heal.
Yeah. I mean, the honest to goodness truth is that it can be anything. It can be anything that is allowing each of us to express ourselves in a way that maybe we don't do on a daily basis, right? It could be movement, expressive movement. It could be journaling. It could be decorating a cake. It
Mhm.
could be, rearranging your furniture, right? Anything that sort of puts you in this space where you are allowing yourself to, flow with this, sort of inner, experience, and you're putting yourself into something, and, the benefits of that are just incredible, incredible. You can really help to, re-regulate your emotional state. You can help to sort of touch into parts of yourself that give you an expanded view of what you're capable of, or, "Hey, I didn't know I could do that." And,
Mm,
the benefits are just endless.
yeah. So, one of the things you did in addition to writing the book was to start kind of a nonprofit, right? And you've been able to take that concept into traumatic situations. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yeah, so the nonprofit is called Thread, and the essence of it is to be able to serve communities that have a common thread, right? Which is a shared experience, and oftentimes a difficult experience. And so several years ago, I was asked to step into a Healing Through the Arts initiative um, at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. And I'm sure you remember the horrific mass shooting that happened there in 2018. And, this ended up being a real turning point for me where I was able to see the power of collective creativity, collaborative creativity, especially in a trauma based situation, have an enormous impact. And so when I arrived, we were working with a group of students, and they were all still clearly in a post traumatic state. They were really unable to speak much. They were sort of very ghost like and kind of unable to connect. And so, the process that I take groups through is sort of start to unfreeze those emotions through musical games and group drumming. And what happens is that there's a safety in that. They're able to sort of release feelings with these musical elements. And then from there, it becomes, a bit of a lyrical brainstorming, a bit of using those musical components, and we create an
Mm.
original collaborative song from that. And I will tell you that we were only there for 4 days, and we were working in one of the classrooms in the school itself. So you can
Mhm.
imagine the gravity of that experience,
Mhm.
and ultimately the triumph of that experience by creating something so powerful uh,
Mhm.
in that space and reclaiming that space. But what I witnessed was this transformation of sort of being unable to express and connect to, by the time we were sharing that sort of rough cut of the song that we recorded with them in that classroom, the students were like fountains of
Oh.
expression. They were so joyful. They were holding each other's hands, and they were
Mhm.
hugging each other, and there were tears of joy because they had finally had this experience of being able to release something that had been
Yeah.
stuck within them, in a safe way. I mean, and that's the beautiful thing about creative expression is it provides a container
Mhm.
for emotions, right? Whether it be through a musical form or through a dance form or through a writing form. That's the power of creative expression. And so I think what I learned from that, what my aha moment was from that was, you know, we often think of creativity as something we do for ourselves, and a lot of times we like to do it in private because we don't want people to see, what we're doing.
Mhm.
But that collaborative, collective experience had the ability to bring each of those students in on an individual level because they were contributing their thread, if you
Yeah.
will, of their experience to a collective project. And then that was the weaving together of those threads, which created even more transformation because there was this power in the collective. And not only was it impacting and healing them, but it when the other students were able to hear that, they felt seen and heard and witnessed for their experience. And so there was this ripple effect of collective healing and support that was possible. And then the final part of it is that now it's a tangible reminder,
Mm,
a talisman, it's a touchstone. If they're having a moment that's difficult or they're feeling re-triggered, they can go to that song and have it serve as a reminder of their strength and their resilience and their grit and their courage and their healing journey, which will
mhm.
be for the rest of their lives, right? Because
Yeah,
it's not something that ends, right? They're always going to be on that. And that's the power both of individual and collective healing, is it can have this um, it can impact somebody individually,
yeah,
it can impact a group in such a profound way.
yeah. I
Mhm,
definitely felt, well, and I'll have the song in the show notes for people to link to and to hear it. It
mhm.
was hard not to cry through it. It
Yeah.
was just so moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are moved so much by group song and
Mhm,
us all joining together for a moment. It just connects us and unites us, I think, in our humanity when we
mhm.
share the beauty of song and music. So thank you so much for doing that. I mean, that's just amazing that you were able to help those kids heal.
Yeah. It's so needed.
So one of the things you mentioned in the book is about jailbreaking and referring to yourself as notorious jailbreaker. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that? Because they might relate.
Yeah, I definitely think we can all relate to this. You know, my story is obviously extreme in terms of my upbringing, but I think because I felt so unsafe growing up, I developed a survival mechanism as I grew older, which was to always sort of jailbreak out of a difficult situation or out of something that wasn't right for me, whether it be a relationship or a job or whatever. And, in some ways that's very good, right? I'm not encouraging anyone to not move out of a situation that's not bad for you. But I mean by this notorious jailbreaking is that it became a survival mechanism or a habit that would take me away from the scenario that I was in, but I wasn't looking within at all to see what my contribution was or what my experience was in that moment, right? Whether I was, contributing to it or whether I was, I don't know if you can relate to this, but sometimes you feel like you kind of live out the same scenario over and over again in different ways throughout your life. And so I was jailbreaking out, but I wasn't looking within. I was always thinking that out there, that there was something else out there that it was going to be better for me. If I just got out of this scenario, it was going to be better. And so over the course of many years of doing my own therapy and sort of self-discovery, I realized that what I should and needed to start doing was to start jailbreaking in. And that sounds sort of like I don't know, odd, right? This idea of like, how do you jailbreak in? But I think a lot of us can relate to the fact that as we go through life and we get piled on with difficult experiences, we tend to build protectors. We tend to build some kind of structures to keep the hard stuff from truly hurting us, right? But what happens when we build those walls or those protectors is we lose access to the deep parts within us that we really need, that are full of these tools and treasures and inner wisdom and our inner knowing, right? And so you lose access to that if you're putting up these walls. So in the book I talk about these different scenarios through which I was being a notorious jailbreaker out. But at some point, I had to realize, the phrase that says, all roads lead to Rome, right? And it was all roads lead to home, which is me, that no matter how many ways I tried to extricate myself from these scenarios, I was always still there.
Yeah.
I was always still,
Right.
and my problems and my issues were still there. And the saying is what's saying, life is an inside job, right? And so, yes, I'm not saying don't deal with what's out there, but when we can jailbreak in a slow and steady and baby steppy kind of way, we can come back in touch with ourselves. We can
Mhm.
find out things that we need to know about why we're where we are, or how to move forward in a truly growthful, expansive way. And so that jailbreaking then becomes this process of inner discovery and removing those barriers that keep us from our true essence.
So I love that because I think that true essence, a lot of that is getting at some playfulness and some underlying creativity, which we've maybe stuffed down and said, nope, I'm not a painter, or no, I can't learn to play the guitar, or whatever it is. But I think what you offer us is a way to look at things just for fun, right? And maybe we make play so much work that it's not fun anymore, right? And so what you're talking about a little bit too in the book is just do it for fun.
Yeah, yeah. I think, as adults, we start to lose permission for that creativity, that creative to inhabit that spark of fun and curiosity and exploration and discovery. But I would guarantee that most of us would say, well, that's what kids do. We encourage our kids to be so creative because we know they're learning about themselves. They're discovering what they're capable of. They're seeing what is in their imagination, which is who they truly are, right? It's
Right.
helping them to discover themselves and their world. And we want that for them. And
Yeah.
we encourage them to do any kind of creative thing because we see that process in play. Somewhere along the line, we don't do that as adults. And maybe society says, oh, you have to be responsible now. And, you have these things you have to do, and you don't have time for play, or play
Got
is
to
for
grow up.
grow up. I love what you said about this play and work. And I'd kind of like to flip the lens on that for a minute. What if, what if the play and the just for funness of any of these activities that we're drawn to that put us in this space of freedom and flow and all of that, what if that was the work of human development,
Mhm.
self discovery, right? If you think about when you're in a situation, and it's harder, I think, as adults, we're kind of covered over a lot more than kids are. But when you're in a just for fun state, you're not using your sort of what I like to call like your top level mind,
Yeah.
right? You're
Mhm.
not regulating yourself. You're not judging yourself. You're just in this expressive state. And what happens when we get below that mind, that kind of stuck habitual way of thinking, is we can access the stuff that's down within us that is full of new ideas, fresh ideas, innovative problem solving, more elements of ourself that are truly us, right?
Yeah.
But all that stuff is in there. And so, what if we could start to think about using play and using the just for fun and using the creative expression in whatever form that is as the work of knowing ourselves and developing ourselves and growing ourselves into bigger and better and more aligned versions of ourselves, and we would take play a lot more seriously if we believed that, right?
Yeah, I think what you offer us too is sometimes we get so impatient in the beginner stage of something that we're taking on and trying to learn or,
Mm.
get into, and we quit because it that beginner stage is requires patience, and it involves tenacity and other attributes that maybe we don't have at hand right then and there. But I think what you're asking us to do is just express ourselves,
Mhm.
just express. And one of the things I loved about your book is that after each chapter, you give us these ways of learning that and working with it. And I still got to work with some of that though, because you talked about singing, and I'm like, oh God, I'm a
Yeah.
little tone deaf, and I love to sing with songs, but singing my own song by myself would definitely
Yeah.
would be the ultimate expression for me to try. So, listeners, like let's all pick something that maybe feels very uncomfortable, but that we're just going to say, okay, I'm just going to express myself. I'm
Yeah.
going to dance without worrying about judgment, like, and just not look at everything as something to have to begin and learn and advance, and this whole aspect of how we can go about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
I think one of the cool things about what you're sharing is it sort of reminds me of this notion that, you know, we are often struck by these things of like, oh, I'm not good at that, or I'm
Right.
stupid. I feel stupid when I'm doing that, or I'm terrible at that. We have this inner critic, which really sort of holds us back. But one of the things I'd like to mention about when you were saying about the singing, like I love the singing, but I don't like to do it by myself. I always encourage people to not focus on what you are doing, but what you are feeling,
Mm,
right? And so that's the process of kind of creating this muscle of using creative expression as a tool is, if we could, and I talk about this in the book. I give strategies for sort of working with that critic and that part of us that steps in that tells us we're terrible at this, is like, you want to cultivate the fact that if you're singing using your voice, well, that voice is a sensation in your body. It's not how it sounds, but the sensation of using your air and those vibrations that are in your body actually feels good, right? And those
wow.
vibrations are actually having an impact on your nervous system, believe it or
Uh-huh.
not. There are
Uh-huh.
frequencies that are going on that are calming and regulating your nervous system, but focus on the feeling of that experience. And it's easier said than done, but if you can take the judgment out of it and say, oh, actually, I'm actually feeling really good with the way this flow is, or the way I'm dancing in the kitchen, this feels really good in my body. When you can direct your attention to the feeling and the flow,
Yeah.
that's where you're able to sort of access more and more of that, because you're like, I want more of that good feeling. I want more of those good vibes, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try it by myself.
Good.
Because I think that's an awesome way to look at it instead of listening to the inner critic. And we've done
Mhm.
some episodes on that. And one of the things I wonder, maybe you have a thought about this, is do you think our younger generations, our Gen Zers and our millennials, have a leg up in this area? Like, are they more likely to express themselves creatively? Like, I see it in my daughters, and they're like
Mhm.
all over trying different stuff. But I'm wondering if what your thoughts are about that.
Yes, I think that's true. On one level, they're a little closer to childhood than we are, which
Right.
haven't maybe lost all of the components of freedom and flow that we have. And I worked in schools and youth centers for many, many, many years. And I think one of the beautiful things about young people is they are, um, perhaps in some ways a little more courageous, right? They are seeing what's going on in the world out here, which is with incredible gravity, and sadly they're very aware of all of these sort of crazy elements of our world, socially, politically, environmentally, you name it, right? And so I think that leg up, in my opinion, could also stem from like what I'm seeing out there is not resonating with me, right?
Mhm,
I
mhm,
don't want that. That makes me unhappy. So what if I was focusing on what I'm about? And by developing that part of myself, maybe I can bring some change to the world that
mm,
I want to see, that I want to bring, and I often talk about this, and actually the tagline or one of the phrases that I use with the nonprofit is, changing the world one person at a time from the inside out, right? And so I
mhm,
think our younger generation, my son is turning 20 in next month, and so I have these conversations with him, and you know, I think that he genuinely feels like he can be at change by being more authentic, by being more, expressive with his
mhm,
truth and his, um, you know, um, I don't know what the right word is, but almost like innate wisdom
mm,
of what he sees going on in the world and what he wants to bring change to. Um, and I love that with the younger generation, that there is an element of wanting to change, wanting to make a difference, but bringing more of themselves to the world.
mhm,
And
mm.
that resonates so much with me because I do believe that. I do believe that we have the ability to impact humanity by going within
Yeah.
and creating more strength and more authenticity and more alignment within ourselves, which can have a concentric circle ripple effect because that inspires others to do the same for themselves. And that's the power of using your own creativity and your own toolbox to make change on the outside as well.
Well, we definitely need that creativity right now, right? That problem solving, the different aspects that we can go about solving some of these big, big problems we have. So,
Mm.
anyway, it makes me feel very hopeful.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of the aspects we had that we wanted to on our outline. I'm going through the list and going, well, we talked about flow, we talked about the inner critic. um, is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't covered that you would like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah. I think I'd like to dive just a little bit more back into this notion of flow, just a touch. We are often um, aware of these sort of knee-jerk reactions that we can have to life, whether and they are often defined as these sort of like four categories of traumatic responses, and we know them as fight, flight, freeze, and there's a fourth one which is called fawn, which I didn't even know about, which is sort of kind of trying to make peace, by compromising yourself in a situation, so you're fawning to the situation. But this idea of flow was something that came to me as sort of a potential fifth
Mm,
response to a difficult experience. And what's different about flow is that it's not an instinctual sort of, you know, human civilization kind of um, response that we have had, what that animals and human beings have had over the course of humankind. But when we think about being able to use flow, what it does is we practice it. It's like a muscle, right? We said, okay,
mhm,
I'm starting to get triggered. I'm having a panic attack. I'm getting dysregulated. I'm feeling anxious. We can start to practice this idea of flow, which is choosing to do an activity. It can be anything that gets us out of that place in our mind, something repetitive, something expressive that allows us to discharge that difficult moment, that um, that emotional experience of dysregulation, right?
mhm,
So, for example, it could be going out and taking a walk.
mm,
But in addition to taking a walk, maybe you're, clapping your hands in a repetitive way, right? You're using your expression to create something repetitive that takes you out of that stuck space and allows you to release those experiences, those feelings, right?
Mhm.
So when I talk about this idea of flow, this is what I mean with the lifeline, this idea of the lifeline in real time. You know, we often think of creative expression as sort of this, oh, this is an auxiliary sweet thing that, could be helpful in our lives if we feel drawn to it. But I try to make a case for creative expression can actually be the lifeline in these moments when you need help re-regulating yourself in
Mm.
a moment. And that kind of developing of that mindset and that practice of putting yourself in a flow situation um, becomes one of your greatest sources of self trust and self reliance and self confidence, right?
Mm.
And if I
Mhm.
could just say, I'm sure that you have listeners who have similar experiences to me, where sometimes I get really throughout the course of a day, I can get like almost like paralyzed by a feeling or an emotion, right? And then that tends to kind of keep me stuck, right? And
Uh-huh.
it
Uh-huh.
kind of ruins my quality of life in that moment, right? And so I want the readers to know that it's not just creativity for fun. It can actually be this lifeline moment when you're accessing part of what you have within you to help you re-regulate and to help you feel better. And with that comes this increasing self-confidence and self-discovery, and knowing that you can navigate the ups and downs of the day. You can feel safer
Mhm.
within your life because you have this 24/7 tool available to you when you need it. And so I think that would be sort of, for me, sort of the final piece that I'd just like to leave everyone with is that each of us has everything we need already inside of
Mm.
us to navigate the ups and downs of life and to live our best life. And the answers aren't out there. They're not, somebody else doesn't know what's right for you because they're not you.
Mm.
You know, each of us has the perfect combination of gifts and skills and talents and inner resources that nobody else has, right? That's our gift to ourselves, is that we have these elements within us already.
I'm
And it's
feeling
also,
so touched right now. I was like, I got tears
oh,
coming.
oh,
Keep going,
okay.
girlfriend, because it
And
sounds so
it's
good.
also our gift to the world, right? It's our gift to the world when we have access to all that's within us. And I refer to this in the book as, this is our brilliance. This is our brilliance. What makes us us is our brilliance. And being able to unearth that and recover and uncover and discover that is going to make our lives so beautiful and so meaningful and so aligned. But you also never know who might need the brilliance that you have within you. So you're able to exude that into the world and make an impact in the world simply by being you. And that is the simplicity and the power and the beauty of what each of us has within us
Mm.
that no one can take away because it's you.
Oh my goodness. You know, I don't think I've ever been quite as touched by a guest that we've had on like you. So I
Mm,
thank you for reaching all of us
mm,
and doing your book and doing your work and speaking with such power and authority about this. That really, we need you and we need your brilliance. So thank you so much for joining us today.
oh, my pleasure. It's been such a joy having this conversation with you. It feels
Mm.
such a beautiful flow, as we like to say, right?
Definitely.
Exactly.
All right. So before I get so moved that I forget to ask you this, how can our listeners find you, follow you, learn about your nonprofit and also your amazing book?
Yeah. Well, let's start with the book, Lifeline, let me get it straight. Recovering your mental wellness through uncovering your creative brilliance. You can buy it on Amazon. It's both in paperback and Kindle version. Um, you can find me just simply at my name, which is my website, lanegardner.com. There's all kinds of resources there. I do individual coaching. There's so much information there about the work that I do and how to work with me, and also some of the free toolkits and stuff that I'm offering that you can kind of get started right away, see what it's all about. You can find my nonprofit, which is the name of it is Thread, but the actual web address is Thread Connects, CONNECTS.org. And you'll be able to see both the Parkland song and some of the other amazing work that we've been able to do with other communities. And then you can just find me on, LinkedIn, um, Instagram, Facebook, just type in my name, you'll find me. And, I would just love, love, love if this resonates with you, connect with me, right? It's not about being alone in our situations. It's about the power of connecting. So, you can email me through my website. I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to know what's going on and sort of, build
Mm.
a conversation around what we have inside us, what we need for our mental health. And I think we can sort of reach a lot of people in numbers.
Absolutely. Thank you again. I love you. Take care.